All right. Thanks everybody for coming. These are wild times and we will get through them together. My goal here is to provide value to anyone creating demand in an organization, really anyone generating front-end activity. The intended audience of this call is anyone from marketing of all levels to sales of all the levels. So I want to start this off with a quick story. When I moved from Alaska, where I grew up, to Burlington, Vermont, I got a job selling Comcast cable door to door. And let me tell you, the deals did not flow. I started out thinking the whole world was to sell to. Every door looked the same. It caused lots of thankless, hot, miserable days. Then I happened across a landlady who would change things for me quickly. She asked, "You're new here, aren't you?" And I was only a little surprised. Then she continued, "You're best off hitting the college kids in these neighborhoods where I was selling at the beginning or the end of the summer when people are moving in or out. Otherwise, I'd stay out of these neighborhoods and hit where the families are in the outskirts of the suburbs of the city." I heeded her advice, altered where I spent my time, and when I've returned to certain places, and I'll just say it was worth it enough that all these years later, I'm still in the game, passionate as ever. This, importantly, was my first introduction to the power of reframing an addressable market to uncover more sales opportunities efficiently. Every door is not the same. It's a simple, valuable lesson, and it's more relevant than ever. So today, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about the theory of prospecting as I see it, and then we're going to talk about 4 tactics that you can bring to your organization, your team, or even just implement in your own game, starting hopefully after the call. So the big idea, if you remember a single tactic, I want you to keep this in your mind. As you work to accelerate sales, whether it's for an entire organization, a team, or yourself. And that idea is you can re-energize opportunity creation by framing or reframing your addressable market. But trust where the data leads you. Save your intuition and creativity for the selling. The data is going to tell you a lot if you let it. So let's talk about the elements of selling, of prospecting. We have 4. The first is characteristics. What does the company and the individuals at the company look like? That could be revenue, technology being used, employee count. One thing to note here, and I will use this term from here on out in this talk, is the TAM, the term TAM, and that is the total addressable market. That is every firm that you could possibly target in your marketplace. Also note that characteristics are similar in a TAM of companies. So that's an assumption that we make. The second element we have is timing. Those are what external or internal volatile, in they're likely to change, forces are affecting the target company and influencing the probability of starting a sales conversation with them. The next is content. And this is what you and your organization influence greatly. It is the content your prospective companies are consuming, which includes anything from an email to a blog article or a video, and even a call script. The third is engagement, which is the measurement of the activity the prospect is taking on your content. The second and important part of engagement is the activation method or the channel you're using to actually get that content in front of your prospect, whether that be phone, LinkedIn, email, website chat, etc. So if we bring all these elements together, we can make one really clear, powerful statement that is how we create opportunities. And that is match the most relevant content at the time with the right subset of your market to drive positive engagement and ultimately start sales conversations. So back in the day when we were coming together here at Union Resolute, and we were doing research and building this theory of data-driven methodology of prospecting, Mark Troy, Union's CEO, some of you on this call might know him, gave me the nickname the Mad Scientist. Now, I am always good for an analogy to explain things, and back then there were a lot as we were trying to make sense of our research and findings. So both the Mad Scientist title and the particular analogy on this slide that I'm going to talk about here have stood the test of time. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle is you cannot measure both the velocity and determine the location of a subatomic particle, so think electrons in an atom, at the same time. It's just too small, and it's by taking the energy to measure that, you actually alter what's going on. But if you're just trying to make sure that you're holding the right element, does it really matter? So if your TAM, your total addressable market, is the entire periodic table of elements, every element known to man, and a person is one of those subatomic particles, you've got to realize that you are not going to know the specific time and precisely where inside a company to hit to start a sales conversation. You have to do what the scientists do and work in groups that are large enough to ensure that you are holding the right thing, the right material, but not so small that we expend unreasonable amounts of energy trying to capture data that will ultimately be irrelevant. So what we need to do is we need to build the best groups that are the most descriptive as possible, or to use another analogy, back to my original story, get in the right neighborhood at the right time, but not necessarily focus on walking past every door to get to the right door. So let's talk about two data types. And the two data types we're going to talk about are represented in the 4 elements of prospecting. And those are characteristic data and timing data. Characteristic data, and just one thing here, these are both incredibly important, equally important. I might spend more time on one just because of the data types. So characteristic data is static. It does not change, okay? And that means that these are things like the technology a company uses is fairly static. The headquarters of a location, the employee count, the annual revenue, the number of locations, the industry, the vertical. These are things that we can use to describe a company in a way that is fairly static. Then we have timing data. Timing data changes. It is dynamic. And that's things like the content the people inside the company are consuming, actions that are being taken on social media by people at that particular company. I'll stop for 1 second here. Intent data, the way we talk about the term intent data is actually those first 2 bullets, which is content consumption and social actions. And we'll go into intent data a little bit on the next couple of slides. Then we have things like ICP job changes. So is the ideal role at a particular company, have they changed jobs? We'll talk about the importance of that. Company leadership changes and funding rounds. So if you are a data scientist or a programmer building, say, HG Insights, which is a great provider of technographic data. And as I mentioned with technographic data, that is the data that a company uses, such as anything from Google AdWords to an ERP solution or a CRM. So if you are a programmer at HG Insights working on technographic data, you want to simply figure out what technology a particular company is using. If you were a data scientist working on intent data at Bombora, which is that content consumption or social actions, you were working to figure out what content is being consumed and actions people are taking at a specific company. But what does that data truly do for us to drive new opportunities if they're taken alone when we're talking about sales or marketing? Nothing, really. So it is our game, our mad science, to put it together. Each case is different. Each company is different. And the magic is when these data sources, from the simplest to the most complex, are put together in a way that drives sales success. Each company, when this is done, is so powerful. So let's talk about how we can put it all together into these 4 tactics that everybody came here to see. So the first tactic is the technographic reframe. Technographic data, as I've noted before, gives insights on what technology a particular company uses. As I mentioned, this could be anything from the users of Google AdWords for marketing, an ERP solution for operations, or a CRM tool like Salesforce for sales. Its real power is to segment your TAM, your total addressable market. The goal is to use these to distill your TAM into the most relevant categories. This particular tactic asks an explicit question. How else can we slice up our market than how we already are before? Look, before I break these next 4 elements down, let's think about how technology, which at this point is just about every company uses or has trackable tech, can tell us, let's think about what it can tell us about those companies. It's not really about, oh, this company uses X tech and ending the story there. It's finding the ways that we can, or the ideas we can draw about how that company is or how that company thinks. So let's talk about how we can frame things here. Let's talk about the offer. Are there users of a specific technology that you believe might respond to an offer because of the behavior or you believe that technology might signal about that company and the people who work there? Common ground. This one's fun. Your company might have specific connections to certain technologies or also might use it themselves. You've got to be artful and it's got to be authentic. But when it comes off, it's truly a beautiful thing. The next is use case. With the use case, this can be thought of in the light of complementary software. Have your best customers already made a certain type of investment? And does it make sense to find others like that? Then we have language match. Certain tech, think HubSpot, Salesforce, and the like, have created their own language. So finding these groups allows you to incorporate subtle hints that you get it. So by using technographic data and matching them with things like common ground, use case, language match, you can probably resegment your TAM to find new opportunities to provide powerful content that drives engagement and then creates those sales qualified conversations. So let's talk about the job change data slurp. As I mentioned, when breaking down the data types, a job change is a type of timing data. We know that organizations are more likely to launch strategic initiatives, change current operational procedures, or may even have a mandate to hit certain KPIs as they come into a new role, change regimes, maybe they change leadership teams. The problem is it's challenging to keep up with the data. And even if your organization has access to a database like, say, ZoomInfo, there are still plenty of difficulties. It's not easy to track in a big database. And if that prospect is in ZoomInfo, every other marketer, demand generation, and sales team will unfortunately have access to really hit them with a lot of outreach. And trust me, It's not just your competitors who are reaching out to them. It's everybody with a subscription who that might be on their ideal customer profile role. So for this particular tactic, it will require 2 cheap and easy to sign up for apps. Many of you will have at least one, Sales Navigator. Sales Navigator makes it quite easy to track job changes, albeit these are self-reported. But as we said before, we are trying to get to the groups, not to the electrons. The next is Seamless.ai. Seamless.ai integrates directly through a Chrome extension with LinkedIn and gives you the ability to capture contact information of people and companies that may not be readily available to your competitors. And while you can easily outreach in LinkedIn with this info, you can quickly get email and phone numbers to have that increased chance of gaining traction through multi-channel outreach. So that is the job change data slurp. The next is the intent data value avalanche. So this tactic can help your organization turn around increased ROI on intent data inside of a quarter. Let's review the flow first. So we have Bombora, which is an intent data provider and the leading provider of intent data, but it can be switched out for whatever provider you use. Then you have Sales Engagement, or Sales Loft, which is a sales engagement tool, which you can switch out for even just a CRM tool, but not a marketing automation tool. That would be missing the point. Then we have Vimeo, which is a great video content platform that can be switched out for anything like a blog, a YouTube, an ebook, etc. Vimeo is a fantastic platform. So as I mentioned before, intent data measures content consumption and potentially actions taken on social as well. This simply means a company is consuming additional content. And if you can pick up on the right signals, you can identify when companies might be researching a purchasing decision. But assume that you need to provide more value first, which is where this playbook comes in. The idea of this one is really simply to get valuable content in front of prospects with every touch, whether it be phone, email, or LinkedIn. So to put it back together, use Bombora to find your accounts, gather the contacts, build a nice 45 to 60-day cadence in your tool, Sales Loft, Outreach, whatever, that gets solid content in front of your prospect and focus on driving value. The important step right before generating a sales conversation in our simple statement of successful prospecting is driving that positive engagement. So use the intent data to simply guide who you reach out to and with what, but trust the human diligence and creativity to turn that engagement into an opportunity. And I mentioned, let the data guide you and then trust your human intuition to really sell. The fourth tactic is the no demos needed lookalike. So there are some really cool tools that can help build lookalike audiences by leveraging AI and all kinds of fancy data scraping and whatnot. But let me back up. A B2B lookalike is a group of companies that on the basis of many factors are similar to similar to another, but known group of companies. So you have an unknown group of companies that are created by a group of companies that you may know, like your best customers. This modeling can help you either identify net new companies or even simply reframe your existing known TAM. The no demos needed part of this means you can literally take action on this for free today. The 3 apps in the middle of the parentheses will help you identify other companies that are competitors or share characteristics of your best customers or your ideal customers. So using this publicly available information, and it's very organized information, I challenge you to research your best customer, 2 or 3, and start to compile lists of companies. What you will be left with are lookalike audiences that you can begin to message into similarly, or you might even uncover new companies that you should have been including in your outreach all along. Well, everyone, that concludes my talk here. I love this stuff and would welcome you to reach out with any questions you might have. Connect with me on LinkedIn or even shoot me a text. My number, that is my direct cell phone line. I hope everyone here takes something to their teams or even their own game to help boost their opportunity creation, especially as we move through these crazy times. I hope everybody has a great day. And I will stay on to, I will open up the chat. And if anybody would like to ask any questions, we can have a Q&A for the next 7 or 8 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Lots of good questions. Yeah, let me, okay. So I will start with Cheryl. So Cheryl, sorry, I moved past that, didn't I? The first one is Owler. The second one is craft.co. And the third one is G2 Crowd. I'd love to address Cindy Hunter. Thank you for that question. We are seeing the importance of maintaining empathy, the importance of positioning, the importance of content has increased. We're seeing that, you know, selling has definitely, the way we're doing it has changed, but from the tactics of outreach, the actual how are we identifying companies, what kind of data are we tracking? Absolutely not. The same best practices. I think that best practices are more important than ever. So I hope that answers your question, but I'd love to, you know, dive into that with you if you want to shoot me a note on LinkedIn. Great, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna put these questions right in here. So craft.co, Aller, and G2 Crowd. Natalia, that's a good question. She asked, based on what you're seeing, how many touches does it take to make a sale during this time? I think you know, there's a lot of what we're doing here with our clients and for ourselves, which is one of the reasons, you know, we've never done a webinar before, but it really comes down to massive amounts of value creation, and really sort of suspending, do I need to close a deal right now? It's really about, can I create value? Can I add value to the people in the marketplace? And then, you know, then we can pick up conversations and we can pick up a backlog later in the summer as the curtain comes up. But really, you know, I think as we talk about empathy, I don't think that companies are you know, necessarily you know, really in a good position to try to measure the touch points of closing a deal right now. I think getting those touch points out is the most important thing, but really driving the content, you know, the content, the value from the content's the really important thing. Libby, I appreciate that. This was the first one we did, and you know, we will definitely get another one of these. We're hoping to put one of these together, you know, once a month. But a lot of fun putting it together, and I hope everybody got some value out of this. Great. So if anybody has one last question, would love to you know, answer it. Got about 3 minutes, and then we all got to get back to the grind. Gwen, great question. Great question. Okay, so these are some good questions. So Gwen, G2 is great in the software space. I've talked to quite a few people over there, and they are really working to build their, you know, kind of their work in the services space and all that. Aller has great coverage, and Craft.co. I think Aller and Craft.co are more like valuable outside of the tech space, where G2 is a little bit more, you know, software oriented. So that would be my answer there. For a real estate company, yeah. So Maggie asked, I'm in the beginning an email marketing campaign for a real estate company that has never done email marketing before. So I'll just go back to one of the best practices here. It's not so much about targeting, but people both in the, you know, in kind of all industries are responding less and less to true marketing messaging. You know, subject lines we're seeing need to be very simple. The text only emails, you know, because we're really looking to drive those responses. So I would say, you know, if you're looking to catch customers' attention, don't look like every you know sort of fancy marketing email. Try rich text. Try, you know, very simple subject lines, and I think you'll get pretty far. Great. George, shoot me a here, George. I'd love to take the content distribution channels conversation offline. Shoot me an email here, and I'd love to respond to you. Not info, intent at resolute.com. That's for George. All right, guys. Well, I need to end the call, so I appreciate everybody hopping on here. I hope you guys all have a great weekend, and keep crushing it.